We'll start our construction of the lighthouse by doing some sub-cutting on some of our chipboard pieces to get them prepared for the next step. So I'm starting here with the main house side walls. There's 2 of them, and we start with a rectangle that's 5.5 by 9.5. And the first thing we want to do is to draw a central line. So if this is 5.5 inches wide, that's 2 3/4, and so I'll just draw that central line. And then I want to measure up on each side 4 3/4, so 4 3/4 on both the left and the right. And then we'll connect those 4 3/4 marks with the top here, and we can remove these 2 triangles to get our main house shape. Now the next thing we want to do is cut a space for the chimney to come in. And to do that, we want to first measure down 2.5 inches, so 2.5 inches from the top. I'll just draw a line there. I guess I'll go this way on my cutting mat. So 2.5 down from the top point. And then we want our space for our chimney to be 1 3/8 wide. So I'm just going to put my centering ruler on my central line that I drew before. And if we want this to be 1 3/8 wide, I measure 1/2 inch plus 3/16 to the left. So that would be 8, 9, 10, 11/16 on the left and 11/16 to the right. And you can just double check that that's your 1 3/8. And then just so I make sure I get a good straight line, I'll bring my centering ruler down here to the bottom and measure that same 11/16 on each side of center. And then I'm just going to connect these dots, but I only need it up to my 2.5 inch line up here at the top. So I'm just going to go that far. And then what I want to do is cut out this piece up here. So I'll end up with something that looks like this, and we'll do that for both sides. So that's the main house side walls. The main house front and back walls, those are just these little 2 1/4 by 4 3/4. Nothing gets subcut on them until we get to the windows. Then we have our entrance side and back walls. Nothing happens with those. And then our entrance front wall, what we want to do, and you can see I've already done it here, is again, this is a 3-inch wide piece. So mark a central line so that you can get a point up here at the top. That would be 1.5 inches. And then measure up 6 1/4. 6 1/4 on each side, both the left and the right. Mark a point there at 6 1/4. Connect that to your central point at the top and remove those 2 triangles. We just need to do this once on the entrance front. Now our tower side walls, they start out 3 inches by 10 inches. And what we want to do is create a shape that is 1 1/4 in the center up here. I'll just remove these so you can see kind of where we're going. This is where we're going. So in order to get there, and what I usually do, this is again a 3-inch piece, so I'll mark a central line that's 1.5 inches. See my mark. And then I want, if this is going to be 1.25 inches wide up here at the top, again I'll put my centering ruler on that, and I'll measure 5/8 inch out from the center line up here at the top, and then somewhere down here on the bottom I can measure that 5/8 again, and if I connect those I'll get the lines that we need for up here at the top. And then we'll mark 2.5 inches down from the top on those lines. And that's what creates the point here for the top of the chimney. And then, I shouldn't say chimney, the top section here of the tower. And then we'll measure up 6 inches on both the left and the right and mark a point there. So we'll connect that 6-inch point with the point that is 2.5 inches from the top, and it's 5/8 of an inch from center, or 1.25 inches totally across, but that's what allows us to remove these two pieces on the tower and the tower sidewall, and we'll do that for all 4 tire sidewall pieces. Then our last subcutting is to the house base. And the house base starts out at 5.5 by 7 5/8, and we want to cut a couple notches here that you can see I've cut already. So they're basically 1.5 inches deep and 3 1/8 inch wide. So that to get to that 3 1/8, you can measure 2 1/4 in from the edges, and I'll just use my mat to measure 2 1/4 inches in and draw a line, and repeat that by flipping around and drawing that 2 1/4 line this way. And then we can come this way on our cutting mat and measure in 1.5 inches and repeat that for this side. So then you'll get a notch that is 1.5 inches deep by 3 1/8 inches tall. So that's the preliminary cutting for the house base. Now to cut our windows, we have 2 templates. We're looking here at template 1 marked T1, and it has the window templates for the entrance wall and for the side walls, and then it also has the windows, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So for the entrance wall, we only need to do this once, and the measurements are, this is actually a door down here. It's 1 inch wide and it's center, so 1 inch on either side of this opening. We'll measure up 1/2 inch. The door itself is 2 1/4 inches tall. Then we'll skip 1.5 inches, and then this window is 1 3/4 inches tall and 7/8 inch wide. And because it's 7/8 inch wide, and to get it centered, we have 1.1/16 inches and 1.1/16 inches on the other side. So for the side walls, and for all 4 side walls, we'll cut a window. It's 1.5 inches up from the bottom. It's our standard 1 3/4 inches tall by 7/8 inches wide. To get that 7/8 inch centered, we'll measure in 11/16 from either side to get our 7/8 by 1 3/4 opening. So do that for all 4 sides. And let's look at our end walls next. We've got 2 of these. Here you can see that I finished cutting out for the chimney, like we discussed before. And here I have 4 of our 7/8 by 1 3/4 inch windows, and they are again spaced up 1.5 inches from the bottom. They're 1 3/4 inches tall. Then there's a 1 inch space, vertical space here, and another 1 3/4 inch tall window. Coming horizontally, our measurements are 1 1/4, then the 7/8 window, 1 1/4 in between the windows, 7/8 window, and again another 1 1/4 inches. So that's our end walls. Now for the tower wall, even though there's 4 tower walls, we're only going to cut these rectangular windows into one of the 4. And so this is a 3-inch wide piece. We want to center our 7/8 inch window. So again, we'll have 1 1/16 inch on either side of the window, and coming up from the bottom, it's the standard measurements: 1 1/2 inches, 1 3/4 inch high window, 1 inch in between the windows, and a 1 3/4 inch window opening. Now, on this piece and 2 others, we're going to put in a little tower window. And this is the template here, and you can see that I've cut it out of, I've just cut it out of lightweight chipboard. You could certainly cut it out of, cardstock or whatever you want. It is 3/4 of an inch at the base, and from the base to the tip, it is an 1 3/4 inches. So you could start out with something like that and then just curve the edges, to make it however you want. So to place this window, we want to draw a line on our tower side that is 2 3/4 inches down from the top, 2 3/4 inches down from the top. And that's where the base of our window is going to be. And then we'll just center this template. And it should, because it's 3/4 of an inch wide, and as you recall, this is 1 1/4 inch wide, we'll end up with 1/4 inch on either side. So you could draw those lines in, or just, use your eyeball to get that centered and draw around that. And then we'll cut that out. If you have a good sharp craft knife, you won't have any problem to do that, in doing that. And then we'll repeat, just making this little window on 2 other blank sides. So those are our windows. I'll get that cut and then I'll be back. Let's make some windows for our project. And here on the first page of the template, you can see I've got 2 drawings laid out here. The first one is for the tower windows. So this is just the curved windows at the top, and we need to make 3 of those. And then the main window, those windows that the opening was 7/8 by 1 3/4, we need to make 15 of those. And I have here what size to cut the plastic. I'm cutting it 1 1/4 by 2 1/4 for the tower windows, and 1 3/8 by 2 1/4 for the main windows. Now I'm going to trim out with white cardstock, and most of these strips are 3/8 of an inch wide. The only exception is the little cross piece here in the center. That's only 1/16 of an inch. It says here interior divider 1/16 inch wide. That's the same on both pieces. And then here on the top of the tower window, I've cut this piece 3/4 inch by 1 1/4 to start with. So let's see how these windows go together. I'm going to start with the main window, and hopefully you can catch the reflection of the plastic on here. If not, by the time I start adding the cardstock, you will see it. So I'm going to start by just putting a strip of 3/8 inch cardstock, and I back this with score tape before I cut it. And I'm just going to put a piece of 3/8 there, and I have it now at the top. And then you can see I've listed 1.5 inches here. This is the best way I have found. You may have a better way to put window trim together without having, in order to have nice joins in between the pieces of trim. So I've cut these 1 1/2. I'm just making sure that I have them, get a hold of it, butted up nicely against the top, and then coming down straight on the edge of that plastic. And then I'll just take another of my long strips here and make sure I butt up right against that edge and right against that edge, and now I can come and trim that off. And then give that a burnish. And you might notice the joins now, but once it gets inside of the window, they are not as easy to see. Then you can decide where horizontally, vertically you want to place this divider. What I'm doing is I'm placing this, I'm working upside down. I have the top edge of the opening on the 1 inch mark on my cutting mat, and then I'm just going to put this divider somewhere between the 1/2 inch and the 3/4 inch mark. I don't like it to be exactly in half, but you know, that's personal preference. Then I'll just put that down and use my craft knife, and then I end up, put this brown cardstock behind it. Now I'm going to use brown cardstock behind mine because of my paper, my pattern paper choices. You could use whatever color you want to behind your windows. And the way I'll fasten that is to just put score tape around the edges here and then put those two pieces together. So that is the main window. And then for the tower window, I start out with my piece that is 3/4 by 1 1/4 that fits up here. And I'm just going to make 2 little tick marks that are 3/8 of an inch in on either side. You could use a ruler, I'm just using my cutting mat. They're 3/8 of an inch on either side. Now you could print this out and make a template. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to float my pencil right above where this point of the arched window is, and then I'm going to slip my paper in behind it, and then I can make a little mark there for where it goes. And then in case I don't have that exactly centered, I can bring in my ruler and come down here and get that mark centered. Now, you could trace out the opening. I think this will end up being pretty close and looking all right. And so I just kind of sketched in those curves down to the 3/8 inch mark. Now I'm just using some detail scissors to cut this out. And of course I backed this with score tape before I began. And erase any stray pencil lines. And then this piece can go right at the top of our plastic. several strips of score tape on here because I didn't have anything that was 3/4 of an inch wide, so I'm going to try to get that lined up just right there. And then you'll notice here on the cutting guide I have that the length of these strips is 1 1/8 inches. So we should be able to meet that corner up because we made that little 3/8 inch tick mark, and come down on the side. We'll repeat that for the other side. It's more important that the interior meets up than the exterior, so if you have to make a choice for the interior to line up. And then just like when we did the main windows, we'll take a 3/8 inch strip, butt it right up against the bottom of those two, and I just flip this over and cut it off with my craft knife. And then give that a burnish. Now, especially on these windows that go in the tower, if anything is overhanging, I'm going to give that a little haircut because I don't want these. It's important that these are no bigger than 1 1/4 inches, so you may need to measure and make sure that that's what you end up with, because the tower walls, of course, are only 1 1/4 inches wide. And then I didn't put the divider on that one yet, but I would just line up the point of my of my window here, and then come in with my little skinny strip. And I'm going to follow my plan of going between 1/2 and 5/8. Now to start with, I'm not sure if we'll end up using these wings. You can see that there's some wings here on the side, and I'm just going to cut these bigger. They can always be trimmed off if we don't need them. So I've cut this piece of backing to be 2 1/4 square, and I've scored it 1/2 inch on either side, so that in case when it goes into the tower we need to anchor it to the adjoining sides, we'll have something built in here to do that with. And if we don't end up using it, we can simply just trim that off. So that's what I'm going to do there. And just to show you what this, how it looks in the tower. It would come in, and of course we'll have our pattern paper on here, but that gives us a nice reveal of some white cardstock. And you can use whatever color cardstock goes with your pattern paper. So I'm going to repeat that and make the remaining windows so that I'll have them all prepped and ready to go.